सुंदर और ग्रैंड इंट्रोडक्शन है विद्रोही जी के ऊपर और देख कर के मुझे बहुत सारी यादें भी आई और बहुत अच्छा भी लगा। लेकिन इस फ्रेमवर्क में शायद जो बात आज मैं कहना चाहती हूँ वो बहुत साधारण और ऑर्डिनरी लगे, लेकिन शायद ये याद रखना भी ज़रूरी है कि बहुत बड़े और बहुत महान कवि भी बहुत साधारण भी हो सकते हैं। तो मैं पढ़ कर के एक्चुअली सुनाऊंगी और अंग्रेजी में है। To speak about a dead man is a peculiar thing, even more so when he happens to be a poet. And not just a poet, but an infamous one. But I'm still going to try. In doing this, there are many instincts that I have tried to wrestle. His several and often violent outbursts, the many conjectures about his relationship with his family, his ill-concealed need for attention, the useful anger of some of his poems, for it is mostly an insult for artists to be overtly useful to some, the presence of mostly mothers and sisters and not of fallen promiscuous women in his world, are perhaps enough to cut him to size, to cull from his memory every iota of nostalgia, tenderness, or empathy. Or worse, make every obituary of him into a defense. I do not wish to defend Vidrohi, because defending the dead is an unadventurous thing to do. The dangerous and the disruptive have to be recast in retrospect to fit into the respectability of death. Not all of Vidrohi's poems may have been equally wonderful. His personal life may not have been an illustration of his political beliefs. He may have even had an uncritical relationship to certain political languages. But one thing is for certain, that Vidrohi was never tied to respectability. In fact, he was never going to die. In my conversations with him, he had often spoken about his death. We had revisited the scenario over and over again, like a dream or a film. It had a grand setting. He told me, अब जो तुम मुझे रिकॉर्ड कर रही हो, मैं जानता हूँ कि इस दुनिया को मैं बहुत ही हैंडसम और ग्रैंडसम वे में गुड बाय कहूँगा। बहुत कम लोग हैं जो जीवित होते हुए भी अपनी मृत्यु के बारे में ऐसे बात कर सकते हैं। On another occasion, he had said to me, as my fame has increased, so have my dangers. प्रसिद्धियों के साथ साथ खतरे भी बढ़े हैं और अब खतरों के साथ गारंटी को बढ़ना चाहिए। Your records are guarantee against that largest threat of being killed. I say to my enemies that if you want to kill me, then shoot me in the eyes, because I will keep staring back at you till my last breath. Your records will help me stare back at them, even after I'm gone. In his imagination, Vidrohi was not going to just die. He would have to be killed. So the news of his death seemed a bit strange, incomplete. I use the word strange for the way he and I got to know each other. While now I call myself a filmmaker with some confidence in public settings, in 2012 this was not the case. I was not really a bona fide political artist, deserving of any attention from a poet like Vidrohi, who by his own admission had risen to the status of the ghost of Julius Caesar. Added to this, my first meeting with him was disastrous. It was the first and only time I saw him get angry with me. The meeting time was decided for 2 p.m. on a Monday in the winter of 2011 on this campus. This was in the midst of a crisis in my own MPhil, so it almost escaped my mind. I finally made it an hour late to see Vidrohi waiting on a bench outside Brahmaputra hostel. He saw me approaching and his face tightened. He said, I normally never wait for people. Of course, many months later, in another time he would tell me, रिकॉर्ड होने की तो मुझ में इतनी इच्छा है कि अगर कोई आधी रात को पेड़ पर टंगा के भी रिकॉर्ड करने की बात करे तो हम उसके साथ चल देते हैं। Already nervous about being an hour late without any good reason, I set up the shot and started recording him talking about his poem Nani. I was horrified to see that the camera was dying. Behind the lens, as I struggled to look composed while feeling for a spare battery in my bag, he stopped. He paused for a bit and went on to say, तुम लेट आई, फिर कैमरा भी ठीक से तैयार करके नहीं लाई, ये सही नहीं है। लेकिन हम आर्टिस्ट लोग ऐसे ही होते हैं। अगर एक अफसर की तरह सब टाइम टू टाइम करने लगे तो हम में और उसमें फ़र्क ही क्या रह जाएगा। हाई फाई लोगों के साथ मुझे काम करना इसलिए पसंद नहीं कि वो कन्वेंशन से टूट नहीं पाते। This was in some ways my first education in how an artist should be dealt with. how belief and conviction in artistic work can be held, irrespective of the flawed performance of the artist on the scale of the norms of sociability. Of course, I was to realize that Vidrohi was going to far exceed me even in that department, because for every other date after that, I waited and I waited and I waited for him to turn up, and was never allowed to complain about it once. Like Alok Dhanwa, another infamous poet, says in one of his poems titled Chalk, about these women who his mother used to leave him with, who used to drop him to school. He says about those women, उन औरतों ने मुझे इंतज़ार करना सिखाया. विद्रोही जी ने भी मुझे इंतज़ार करना सिखाया. लेकिन एक बात जो हमेशा से हम लोगों के बीच में स्पष्ट थी कि ये इंतज़ार विद्रोही का नहीं था, बल्कि एक कविता का था. और कविताओं की मनमानी सहना और उनका इंतज़ार करना सीखना बेहद ज़रूरी है. विद्रोही taught me another thing without knowing it, of course. To be wary of false humility. To get caught in the web of appearing self-effacing while hanging on to the egotistical conception of the artist. The biggest danger of being humble is that the poet has to forfeit the possibility of being a magician. What a drab, insufferable thing a humble magician would be. To help strike a reasonable balance between a self-obsessed, delusional and often male artist and a playful magician, I turn to Eduardo Galeano, who in his book Days and Nights of Love and War says, and I quote, "I don't share the attitude of those writers who claim for themselves divine privileges not granted to ordinary mortals, nor of those who beat their breasts as they clamor for public pardon for having lived a life devoted to serving a useless vocation. Neither so godly and nor so contemptible. Literature as a form of action is not invested with supernatural powers, but the writer may become something of a magician if he or she procures through a literary work the survival of significant experiences or individuals." Unquote. Vidrohi once told me about how he was forcibly made into a magician. Born left-handed, he said, मार मार के सीधे हाथ से सलाम करना सिखाया गया, मार मार के सीधे हाथ से खाना खाना सिखाया गया, मार मार के सीधे हाथ से लिखना सिखाया गया, लेकिन इसका एक फ़ायदा हुआ. अब हम सारे काम दोनों हाथों से कर लेते हैं, और ये तरीके का जादू है. What made our friendship more interesting over time was that the film that I wanted to make about him started to morph into films that were going to feature him but weren't about him. He became a kind of link between other poets from other epochs. In a book titled After Lorca, poet Jack Spicer writes to Garcia Lorca nearly 20 years after Lorca's passing. The letters, written in the fashion of urgent, impassioned inquiry, became a sight for me to see whether images from Vidrohi's world could help Lorca write back to Jack. When I broke this to Vidrohi, he seemed only momentarily disappointed, but soon took it as a challenge to wrestle with two dead poets for film time. He said, "चलो इस पे एक बात तो सही है कि तुम मुझे लॉर्का की श्रेणी में देख रही हो, लेकिन जब फिल्म बन जाएगी तो याद रखना कि सब विद्रोही की कविता से ही उसको पहचानेंगे." Interestingly, the introduction of the book around which the films were going to be structured is written by the dead Lorca, who says about Spicer. He says, "When Mr. Spicer began sending letters to me a few months ago, I recognized immediately the programmatic letter, the letter that one poet writes to another, not in any effort to communicate with him, but rather as a young man whispers his secrets to a scarecrow, knowing that his young lady is in the distance listening. The young lady in this case may be a muse, but the scarecrow nevertheless quite naturally resents the confidences." In my encounters with Vidrohi, I was very much the scarecrow that Lorca feels Spicer makes him out to be. The one who is not the object of communication, but merely a conduit. So in some ways, the films that I made with Vidrohi can be thought of as a story of two oversmart artists trying to use each other as conduits. The last time I met Vidrohi was almost 2 years ago. He had called me from someone's phone at JNU and asked me to come and see him. I had promised that I would, but couldn't make it. He did not remind me. A week after the day we were supposed to meet, I came here looking for him. I couldn't find him. Someone told me that they had seen him leaving campus some time ago. I couldn't call any number to tell him that I had come. Our meeting was deferred, but I did not know for how long. Always surrounded by students, comrades, and opponents, he probably would have not even thought of me in his last moments. I will, however, always regret that I was in another city, unable to bid farewell, unable to see him shout slogans, at his last protest meeting, unable to see him shine with pride as students would implore him to say one more of his poems. Vidrohi ji, please, wo Nani wali, Mohenjo-daro wali, wo bomb wali, barricade wali. He would always take these opportunities and speak of them as gifts. Today, as I try and make sense of his absence, 1 year from his passing, I'm happy that he circulates all around us in all kinds of records. His desire to stare back into the eyes of those who try and silence voices of dissent stays alive in those records. I'm happy that his prophecy about his death being glorious and not going unnoticed has come true. As I think about his passing, I break into a smile, thinking that his ambition in death was to become the left-handed ghost of Julius Caesar. Finally, what I'm happy about is that he will never die again. Lal Salam Vidrohi ji, I will miss you.